Have you ever been told you don't belong somewhere you literally pay to be? Somewhere you helped build? Somewhere your name is on the deed? Let me tell you about a Saturday morning that started with pancakes and ended with a police cruiser, a crying child, and a revelation that made an entire town eat its own words. It was barely 7:00 a.m. when the sun started burning through the trees in Fairmont Estates, the kind of neighborhood where people move specifically so their kids can ride bikes without worrying about traffic. Wide sidewalks, basketball hoops at every other driveway, and at the end of Magnolia Lane, the Harrison family was already awake. Marcus Harrison had been up since 5:30. That wasn't unusual for him. He was the kind of man who believed the day belonged to whoever woke up first. His hands were dusted with flour, pancake batter sizzling on a cast iron griddle his grandfather had passed down to him, maple syrup warming on the stove, fresh strawberries sliced on a plate. This was his Saturday ritual. No meetings, no conference calls, just him, his daughter, and the smell of breakfast filling the kitchen. His daughter, Zoe, came barreling down the stairs like a tiny hurricane. 8 years old, pigtails flying, already wearing her swimsuit under a faded t-shirt. Her goggles were pushed up on her forehead like a second pair of eyes. "Daddy, are they ready? You promised we'd be first ones there." He laughed and flipped a pancake midair. "First ones there, huh? What about breakfast?" She climbed onto her stool, legs swinging, and gave him the look. The one that said she had already calculated exactly how many pancakes she could eat before her patience ran out. "Deal," she said. "Pancakes first, pool second, but you have to make the smiley face with the strawberries." He made the smiley face. His wife, Alina, came down a few minutes later. She kissed Marcus on the cheek and poured herself a cup of coffee, leaning against the counter in her sundress, watching them with the quiet satisfaction of someone who had built exactly the life she wanted. "You two are going to wear out that pool before summer even starts," she said. Marcus winked at her. That's the plan. This was their life. Quiet, simple, normal. But here's the thing about Marcus Harrison. There was nothing ordinary about him. He was the founder and managing partner of Harper Capital Group, a private investment firm that managed nearly $3 billion in assets. He had built it from nothing. No trust fund, no family connections, just an economics degree from Morehouse College and 18 years of relentless, unglamorous work. His office was in downtown Atlanta, 31st floor, floor-to-ceiling windows overlooking the skyline. He managed a team of over 150 people. He sat on 4 corporate boards. His name was on the donor wall at 2 children's hospitals and a scholarship fund that had sent 47 kids to college. But here in Fairmont Estates, most people just knew him as the tall guy on Magnolia Lane who always waved first. And 3 weeks ago, something else happened. Something most of his neighbors had no idea about. Marcus Harrison won a special election. Low turnout, barely covered by local news. The previous mayor had resigned after an embezzlement scandal that made headlines for exactly one news cycle before everyone moved on. Marcus ran because nobody else would. The city was in chaos. The budget was a mess, and Marcus, who had spent his entire career fixing broken things, couldn't stop himself from raising his hand. He won by just over 900 votes. Marcus Harrison was now the first black mayor of Fairmont Estates. He didn't make a big deal about it, no press conference, no yard signs. He was sworn in quietly at City Hall on a Tuesday afternoon. Alina was there. Zoe held the Bible, that was it. So when he walked through his neighborhood, people still just waved from their mailboxes. They didn't know they were waving at the mayor. Now let me tell you about Fairmont Estates. Picture a suburb that looks like it was airlifted straight out of a catalog. Winding streets lined with 100-year-old oaks. Lawns so green they almost hurt to look at. Colonial revival homes with wraparound porches and carriage lamps. Every mailbox painted the same shade of navy blue because the HOA required it. And at the center of the neighborhood, the crown jewel, the community pool, resort-style, heated lap lanes, a children's area with a mushroom fountain, a shaded pavilion with ceiling fans, a grill station, and enough lounge chairs to seat half the neighborhood. HOA dues covered access. Every homeowner received a key card. On Saturdays, the pool was the social engine of Fairmont Estates. Families arrived early. Kids ran across the warm deck. Parents sipped iced tea and pretended to read books while actually watching everyone else. It was the one place where the whole neighborhood came together. But here's the thing about Fairmont Estates. Out of 234 homes, only 12 belonged to families of color. The Harrison family was one of them. They had lived there for 4 years. They paid their dues. They attended every block party. Alina had even started a community garden behind the pool house that supplied fresh vegetables to anyone who wanted them. But to some people in Fairmont Estates, 4 years didn't matter. Block parties didn't matter. Community gardens didn't matter. Skin color was the only membership card they recognized, and nobody embodied that belief more than Franklin Deaver. Franklin lived on the same street as Marcus, just 4 houses down, early 60s, retired early from a regional bank with a pension that was comfortable enough to make him feel important. He had too much time, too many opinions, and almost no self-awareness. He sat on the HOA board. He had filed more complaint reports than any resident in the neighborhood's history. Noise complaints, parking violations, trash can infractions, architectural violations for fence stains that didn't match the approved palette. But there was a pattern. The black landscaping crew he reported for loitering. The Latino family he filed a noise complaint against for playing music at their own daughter's birthday party on a Sunday afternoon. The mixed-race couple he confronted at the pool last July, demanding to see their key cards, and then standing there examining them like they were checking for counterfeits. Franklin never used slurs. He didn't need to. His weapons were polite phrases loaded with poison. Those people, not the right demographic. I'm just protecting property values. And today, he was about to use his favorite weapon of all, a phone call to 911. The sun was high by 10 o'clock. The pool deck was warm under bare feet. Marcus pushed open the gate, key card in hand. The scanner beeped green. Zoe ran ahead, her flip-flops slapping concrete in that rhythm only excited children can produce. Alina followed with a tote bag big enough to supply a small army, towels, sunscreen, snacks, a book she had been trying to finish for a month. A perfect Saturday morning. The kind you look back on years later and wish you could crawl back inside. Marcus set up near the children's area. 2 lounge chairs, a cooler with juice pouches and watermelon cut into star shapes. He knelt on the warm concrete and rubbed sunscreen onto Zoe's shoulders while she wiggled and complained. "Daddy, hurry. The water is calling me. 30 more seconds. You'll thank me when you don't look like a tomato." Alina settled into her chair with her book and her sunglasses and a long exhale that said everything she didn't need to say out loud. No board meetings. No investor calls. No council briefings to review, just her family and the morning sun. She glanced over at Marcus and Zoe and smiled. This was the life they had built. Quiet, simple, earned. Marcus walked into the shallow end with Zoe in his arms. She shrieked when the water hit her legs. He lowered her slowly and she kicked off immediately, paddling toward the mushroom fountain like she had been born in the water. Little white splashes trailing behind her. "Look at me, Daddy, I'm swimming. You're a fish," he said, "a tiny brown fish." He leaned against the wall and watched her. Morning light bounced off the water and caught her goggles, fearless, splashing, giggling at nothing. The sound of a child who had no idea how fast the world could turn. For about 15 minutes everything was perfect. Then Franklin Deaver looked up from his lounge chair across the deck. He had been there since 9. His wife Carol, beside him flipping through a gardening catalog. Franklin had a glass of lemonade and a clear view of the entire pool. He noticed the Harrison family the moment they walked in. His jaw tightened. He set the glass down too hard, and lemonade sloshed over the rim onto the side table. When did they get a key? Who, them? He tilted his chin toward Marcus and Zoe. Never seen them here before. Franklin, please, not today, but he was already sitting straighter, fingers drumming the armrest, eyes locked on Marcus like a security guard who had spotted someone climbing a fence, building a case inside his head the way he always did, looking for something wrong, needing something to be wrong. He watched for a full 10 minutes, a man lifting his daughter, catching her when she jumped, laughing when she splashed him, wiping his eyes and pretending to be shocked so she would laugh harder. 10 minutes of a father loving his child in a swimming pool. In Franklin's mind, that was suspicious enough. He stood up, adjusted his polo shirt like a man preparing for inspection, walked around the edge of the pool with long, deliberate strides. The posture of a man who believed every single tile beneath his feet belonged to him personally. Marcus was lifting Zoe onto his shoulders when a shadow fell across the water. "Excuse me." He looked up. Franklin at the pool's edge, arms folded, chin raised, feet planted wide like he was bracing for resistance. "Are you a resident here?" Marcus set Zoe down gently. "Yes, Magnolia Lane, Marcus Harrison." He extended a wet hand. Franklin looked at it like it carried something contagious. He did not take it. "Never seen you here. Do you have your key card?" Marcus's hand dropped. "I swiped it at the gate, same as everyone else. I sit on the HOA board." Franklin squared his shoulders. "We have had problems, outsiders sneaking in, people who don't pay dues, people who don't belong." The word outsiders landed like a slap. Two families across the pool stopped talking. A mother pulled her toddler closer. The deck went quiet. Alina stood up from her chair, removed her sunglasses. "Franklin, we have lived here for years. I have waved to you from our driveway. We were at the same block party last September." He didn't look at her, didn't turn his head, kept his eyes on Marcus as if she had become invisible. "I am going to need identification." Marcus held the heat in his chest. "I'm not showing you my ID at a swimming pool. I am here with my wife and daughter like every other family." Franklin stepped closer. His shadow covered Marcus's face. "Every other family here. I can personally vouch for them." The silence was suffocating. Everyone heard what he meant. Zoe tugged Marcus's arm, her small voice thin and confused. "Daddy, why is that man being mean to us?" He looked down. Wet pigtails on her cheeks, brown eyes wide and searching for an explanation he didn't know how to give. "It's okay, sweetheart. Swim by the fountain. I will be right there." She hesitated, looked at Franklin with the cautious eyes of a child who could feel danger but couldn't name it. Then she paddled away slowly, glancing back twice. Franklin watched her go. His face didn't soften, it tightened, like the child's presence was an inconvenience. Marcus turned back. "Are we done?" Number Franklin pulled out his phone. "If you won't identify yourself, the police can sort it out." Alina stepped forward. "You are calling the police on a man in a pool with his daughter. I am protecting this neighborhood. That is what I do." Already dialing, he pressed the phone to his ear. When the dispatcher answered, he raised his voice, deliberately loud. He wanted everyone to hear. "Yes, I would like to report a suspicious individual at the Fairmont Estates community pool. Black male, late 30s, with a woman and a child. Claims to be a resident, but I do not believe him. He has been confrontational, refusing to identify himself. I feel unsafe. Please send someone immediately." Every word was calculated, suspicious, confrontational, unsafe. 3 words carefully chosen to trigger one specific outcome. He wasn't making a phone call. He was constructing a weapon out of language, building a frame around Marcus Harrison before the officer even turned the key in the ignition. Marcus stood in the water, completely still, hands at his sides. He had not raised his voice once during the entire encounter, had not made a single aggressive gesture. He had offered his name, extended his hand, answered every question calmly and clearly, and none of it mattered. The police were coming anyway. Alina's hand trembled. She pulled out her phone, opened the camera, tapped record. "What are you doing?" Franklin snapped. "Exactly what you are doing," she said, "making a record." From the pavilion, Patricia Cohen had been watching everything. Late 40s, 14 years in Fairmont Estates. She had seen Franklin do this before. The landscaping crew, the Delgado family, the couple at the pool last summer. Every time she stayed quiet. Not today. Something broke loose inside her chest. She reached into her purse, pulled out her phone, and started recording from a different angle. Her hands were shaking, but she kept the camera pointed straight at the pool gate. Then they waited, 12 minutes that stretched like rubber. The pool went almost completely silent. No more splashing, no more laughter, just the low hum of the filtration system, the soft trickle of the fountain, and Zoe's small voice drifting across the still water. "When can Daddy come play with me again?" Nobody answered her. The question just floated there, hanging in the humid air like something fragile that nobody wanted to touch. Franklin stood by the gate, arms crossed, chin up, standing guard like he had personally apprehended a criminal. Two mothers gathered their children and left through the side gate, towels half folded, bags barely zipped. No eye contact with anyone, not protest, just retreat, just getting out before things got worse. A teenager in the deep end climbed out quietly and sat on the edge with his feet in the water, staring at the ground between his knees. A father near the lap lanes glanced at Marcus, then at Franklin, then down at his own phone. He scrolled through nothing, typed nothing, said nothing. Nobody said anything. The whole pool held its breath. Marcus stayed in the water with Zoe, held her clothes, pointed at the clouds. "What shape is that one? A turtle, Daddy." He smiled and said she was right. Even though he couldn't see anything but white sky and the blur of his own anger, held carefully, painfully, behind his eyes, he was performing calm. The way only a black man in America learns to. Deliberately, precisely, painfully, any crack in the composure, any raised voice, any sudden movement could become justification for everything that happened next. Alina kept recording, jaw clenched, eyes burning, but the phone was steady. Then they heard it, a siren, faint. Then louder, closer. Zoe's head snapped up. "Is that the police, Daddy?" "Yes, baby. Are they coming for us?" He didn't answer. He pulled her tight and pressed his lips to the top of her wet head. The siren cut off as the cruiser turned into the lot. A door slammed. Heavy boots on pavement, the creak of a duty belt. And across the deck, Franklin Deaver smiled. Officer Michael Chen stepped out of the cruiser and adjusted his belt. Early 30s, clean cut. Pressed uniform. He closed the car door and walked toward the pool gate with purpose, but not urgency. Franklin was already there, rushing forward like a man greeting reinforcements on a battlefield, face flushed, hands moving as he talked. "Thank God you are here, officer. I have been dealing with this for 20 minutes. Nobody would listen to me. Nobody takes safety seriously around here except me." Chen looked past Franklin toward the pool, a man in swim trunks standing in the shallow end. A little girl clinging to his side. A woman on a lounge chair holding up a phone. The scene looked about as dangerous as a Sunday afternoon at a church picnic. "Sir, walk me through what happened." Franklin lowered his voice just enough to sound serious, but loud enough for everyone within 30 feet to hear every word. "That man showed up at the pool this morning. I have never seen him before in my life, not once. I approached him politely and asked for some form of identification. He immediately became aggressive, hostile, refused to cooperate. I sit on the HOA board, officer, 5 years. I know every family in this neighborhood, and I am telling you, he does not belong here." Chen nodded slowly, studied the pool one more time, then he walked through the gate. Marcus watched him approach. He moved Zoe gently behind him in the water, not hiding her, shielding her. He could feel her heartbeat against his back, fast and fluttering like a trapped bird. "Sir, I am Officer Chen with the Fairmont Estates Police Department. We received a call regarding a disturbance. Can I get your name?" Marcus's voice was steady, measured. The voice of a man who had practiced staying calm in rooms where no one wanted him to succeed. "Marcus Harrison. I live at 724 Magnolia Lane, right here in Fairmont Estates. Do you have identification on you?" "In my bag." "On the lounge chair over there." Chen glanced at the bag. "Would you mind stepping out of the pool and showing it to me?" Marcus looked at him for a long moment. Water dripped from his arms and fell back into the pool without a sound. Behind him, Zoe's small fingers curled tighter around the waistband of his swim trunks, her grip tightening with every second. "Can I ask what the complaint is, officer? What exactly am I accused of doing?" "We received a report of a suspicious individual who was refusing to leave the premises." "Refusing to leave." Marcus repeated the words slowly, letting each one land like a stone on glass. "I'm standing in a pool that I pay monthly dues to access. I swiped my key card at the gate to get in. I gave that man my full name and my home address. And somehow I am the suspicious individual." Chen didn't respond to that. He just gestured toward the pool stairs. "Sir, if you could step out and show me your ID, we can get this resolved quickly." Marcus exhaled through his nose. He turned, lifted Zoe onto his hip and carried her to the stairs. set her down on the warm concrete. Water streamed off both of them onto the pool deck. Zoe's teeth were chattering now, not from cold, from something she was too young to name but old enough to feel in every bone. Alina was already on her feet. She wrapped a towel around Zoe's shoulders and pulled her close, her phone still recording in her other hand, the red dot blinking steadily. "I want you to know this is being documented, officer. Every second." Chen glanced at the phone, said nothing. Marcus walked to the lounge chair, unzipped his bag, pulled out his wallet, handed his driver's license to Chen without a word. Chen took it and studied it carefully. Marcus Harrison, 724 Magnolia Lane, Fairmont Estates. The photo matched, the address matched, the name matched. Everything checked out perfectly. This should have been the end of it. This is where a reasonable encounter would have stopped. A quick confirmation, a nod, maybe even an apology for the inconvenience. "Have a good day, sir. Sorry to bother you. Enjoy the pool." But Franklin Deaver was still standing 5 feet behind Officer Chen, hovering, leaning in, feeding words into the situation like kindling into a fire he wasn't ready to let die. "Check if that name is on the HOA roster, officer. Anyone can put a fake address on a license. That doesn't prove anything." Chen hesitated. He looked at the license in his hand, then at Marcus, then over his shoulder at Franklin. Something shifted behind his eyes, a calculation, a choice about whose word carried more weight in this moment. "Sir, is there an HOA resident roster I can verify this against?" Franklin already had his phone out. He scrolled through a document with his thumb, squinting at the screen. He found the name almost immediately. Harrison, Marcus E. 724 Magnolia Lane. It was right there, black and white, undeniable, but Franklin shook his head slowly. "This list hasn't been updated in months, could be outdated, I wouldn't rely on it." Marcus watched him lie, watched it happen 3 feet in front of him in broad daylight in front of a police officer, and he said nothing, because he knew exactly what speaking up would cost him. He had learned that arithmetic a long time ago. Chen turned back to Marcus. His voice was polite, but the words landed like a hammer. "Sir, I am going to ask you to step outside the pool area while we finish verifying your residency, just until we get this sorted out." Marcus felt the ground shift beneath his feet. "You want me to leave? A pool I have a key card to in my own neighborhood. Because this man says he doesn't recognize me, sir, I am trying to de-escalate." Alina's voice cut through like broken glass. "De-escalate what? There is no situation, officer. My husband was swimming with his daughter. That is it. That is the entire situation. A father playing with his child in a pool he pays for." Chen raised one hand. "Ma'am, I understand your frustration. Do you really? Because my husband gave you his name, his address, his driver's license. You looked at it, it all checked out. So what exactly are we still doing here? What else does he need to show you? His birth certificate, his mortgage papers, a letter from the governor?" Chen's jaw tightened. He turned back to Marcus. "Sir, I need you to step outside the gate. It won't take long." Marcus stood still for 5 full seconds. 5 seconds where every person at that pool watched a verified homeowner be escorted out of his own community facility by an officer who already had every piece of evidence he needed to end this encounter. Then Marcus walked to the gate, pushed it open, stepped through, and sat down on a metal bench in the parking lot, dripping wet, no towel, no shoes, bare back against hot metal under the midday Georgia sun. Zoe saw him through the fence. She broke free from Alina's arms and ran to the bars. Her small fingers wrapped around the iron, tears streaming down her face. Her voice cracked open the silence like a rock through a window. "Daddy, Daddy, why can't you come back in? Please, Daddy, please come back." Marcus pressed his forehead against the bars from the other side. His eyes were wet, but his voice held. "I am right here, baby girl. I am not going anywhere. I promise." Franklin stood 15 feet away, arms crossed, head tilted, watching the scene with the calm satisfaction of a man who believed the system was working exactly the way it was designed to. 3 families were still at the pool. Not one of them spoke. Not one walked to the fence. Not one said the 8 words that could have ended everything. "Officer, I know this man. He lives here." Silence, the heaviest, most suffocating silence Marcus Harrison had ever endured. Chen walked to his cruiser, ran Marcus's name through the database. No warrants, no criminal history, no outstanding tickets. Nothing. The man, Patricia Cohen, had moved to the fence. She stood 6 feet from Zoe, recording everything. Her video would later show the full timestamp, 18 minutes. A mother across the pool stood up, gathered her things, and walked toward the exit. As she passed Alina, she leaned in and whispered, "I am so sorry." Then she kept walking, didn't stop, didn't turn around, didn't say one word to the officer, just sorry and gone. That's the kind of courage that changes nothing. Finally, Chen walked back from the cruiser, Marcus's license in his hand. "Mr. Harrison, everything checks out. You are free to return to the pool." Marcus didn't move. He sat on that bench for 5 more seconds, looking at the license in Chen's outstretched hand, looking at the gate, looking at his daughter's swollen, tear-streaked face still pressed between the bars. Then he stood, slowly took the license, slid it back into his wallet, and spoke 6 words that made every muscle in Officer Chen's body lock tight. "Do you know who I am?" Chen blinked. "Sir." Marcus looked across the pool deck at Franklin, who was already gathering his things with the smug posture of a man who believed he had won. Then Marcus looked back at Officer Chen, and the air shifted. Marcus reached into his bag, past the sunscreen, past the snacks. His hand found a slim leather case tucked in the inside pocket. He had almost left it at home this morning. Alina told him to bring it. "You never know," she had said. He pulled it out, opened it slowly. A gold seal, a photo, a title, "The Honorable Marcus Harrison, Mayor, City of Fairmont Estates." He held it up, not aggressively, just steady. "The way you hold something that speaks for itself. My name is Marcus Harrison. I am the mayor of Fairmont Estates, sworn in 3 weeks ago." The words landed like a blade sliding between ribs, no explosion, just a clean cut that changed everything. Officer Chen's face drained of color. His hand dropped from his belt. His lips parted, but nothing came out. Mr. Mayor, I had no idea." "I know you didn't," Marcus said. His voice was almost gentle, which made it worse. "That's the problem." Franklin had been walking toward the gate, towel over his shoulder. The relaxed stride of a man heading home after a job well done. He stopped mid-step, turned slowly. His face cycled through confusion, recognition, and horror in 3 seconds flat. Marcus didn't raise his voice. Every word carried the weight of authority earned, not inherited. "I'm also the managing partner of Harper Capital Group. Nearly $3 billion in assets, 4 corporate boards, but none of that matters right now, officer. What matters is this. I showed you a valid license. My address matched. My name was on the roster. And you still made me sit on a bench while my daughter cried through a fence. You had everything you needed. You chose to listen to him instead." He pointed at Franklin without looking. Chen stammered, "Mr. Mayor, I was following procedure." "No, you were following his narrative. There is a difference." The pool deck was frozen. Every eye locked on Marcus Harrison, barefoot, dripping, holding a mayor's badge in one hand and his daughter's towel in the other. He turned to Franklin. Franklin's hands were gripping his bag straps so hard his knuckles had gone white. His towel lay on the ground. He didn't pick it up. "Mr. Deaver," Marcus said. His voice was surgical. "As mayor, I have access to every complaint filed through the city system, every report, every call." Franklin swallowed hard. "I know about the landscaping crew you reported last April, 3 black men doing their jobs. You told Dispatch they were casing houses. I know about the noise complaint against the Delgado family, a children's birthday party on a Sunday. You called it a public disturbance. I know about the couple at this pool last June, a young black man and his white fiancée. You demanded their key cards. When they showed them, you said they might be stolen." Franklin's face was the color of old paper. 27 reports in 5 years, Mr. Deaver. I pulled the records. 24 targeted people of color. Not one resulted in a criminal finding. Not one. He let the number burn. That's not concern. That's a pattern. And patterns get investigated. Franklin stumbled backward. His heel caught a lounge chair. His wife grabbed his arm. He shook her off. "This is harassment. You can't threaten me. You have rights," Marcus said. "So do I. So does every family you have targeted. The difference is, starting today, someone is paying attention." Alina walked forward, phone still recording. "Did you get all that, hun?" Marcus nodded, every word. Patricia Cohen stepped up. "Mr. Mayor, I have the whole thing on video." From the moment he picked up the phone. Then the dam broke. A man near the deep end stood up. He did the same thing to the Parkers. They moved because of him. A woman by the children's area. He reported my cleaning lady, said she was scouting the house. Another voice, then another. 5 years of silence shattered in 30 seconds. Franklin grabbed his wife's wrist. We are leaving right now. Marcus's voice followed him across the deck. Calm, final, Mr. Deaver. Hold on to a good attorney. You are going to need one. Franklin didn't make it to his car before the first notification hit. Patricia Cohen uploaded her video to the Fairmont Estates neighborhood Facebook group at 12:15 that afternoon. 4 minutes of unedited footage. Franklin's 911 call. Marcus standing calm in the water. Chen escorting him out. Zoe crying through the fence. The timestamp running in the corner like a silent witness. By 12:45, the video had 300 shares. By 2 o'clock, it had jumped to Twitter. By 4 o'clock, a local news account had reposted it with the caption, HOA board member calls 911 on city's first black mayor for swimming in his own pool. By 6 o'clock that evening, the entire country was watching. But the first consequence was quieter than the internet. Officer Chen drove back to the station in silence. He sat in the parking lot for 10 minutes before walking inside. He went straight to the office of Chief Anita Reynolds. The woman Marcus Harrison had personally appointed 12 days earlier. Chen told her everything. To his credit, he didn't minimize, didn't spin. He laid out the facts and waited. Chief Reynolds listened without interrupting. When Chen finished, she leaned back in her chair. You confirmed his ID, address matched, name on the roster, and you still removed him from the pool area. Yes, ma'am. On the word of the complainant. Yes, ma'am. Reynolds exhaled slowly. You understand that the complainant had no legal authority to demand anyone's removal, and you gave him that authority anyway. Chen stared at the floor. Yes, ma'am, I do now. Reynolds opened a file on her desk. Effective immediately, you are on administrative desk duty pending a full internal affairs review. You will surrender your patrol vehicle and badge by end of shift. Chen nodded. He didn't argue. He stood up and walked out of the office. The door clicked shut behind him like a period at the end of a sentence. Meanwhile, the HOA board was in crisis. The board president called an emergency session for 8 o'clock that evening. 7 of the 10 members showed up. The meeting lasted 45 minutes. The vote was 7-1. Franklin Deaver was removed from the HOA board effective immediately. His pool access was revoked pending further review. The single dissenting vote came from a man who had played golf with Franklin for a decade and couldn't bring himself to raise his hand against a friend, even when the friend was clearly wrong. The board released a statement at 9:30. It was 3 sentences long. The Fairmont Estates HOA does not condone the weaponization of emergency services against any resident. Mr. Deaver's conduct does not reflect our community values. His position on the board has been terminated. 3 sentences. 5 years of Franklin's reign ended in 3 sentences, but the legal machinery was just getting started. The Fairmont Estates Police Department reviewed Franklin's 911 call that same evening. The recording was clear. Franklin stated that Marcus was confrontational and refusing to identify himself. Both statements were demonstrably false. Marcus had provided his name, his address, and had offered a handshake. The call was flagged as a false police report under Georgia state law. A referral was sent to the district attorney's office before midnight. A local reporter from WSB-TV called Marcus's office at 6:15 that evening requesting a statement. Marcus's press secretary told her the mayor would make a brief statement the following morning, and he did. Marcus stood behind a podium at City Hall. No notes, no teleprompter. Elena stood beside him. Zoe was not there. Marcus had made sure of that. She had been through enough. He spoke for less than 3 minutes. His voice was steady and measured. What happened to me yesterday happens to black families across this country every single day. At pools, at parks, in their own front yards. The difference is most of those families don't have a badge in their bag. Most of them sit on that bench and nobody ever comes back to say they're sorry. That's why this matters, not because of who I am, but because of how many people this happens to who you will never hear about. He paused, looked directly into the camera. Effective today, I am directing the city to conduct a full review of every suspicious person complaint filed within Fairmont Estates over the past 2 years. We will examine them for patterns of racial bias, and we will act on what we find. He didn't name Franklin. He didn't need to. The video had already done that for him. 48 hours in, it had been viewed 22 million times. The city's review took 3 weeks. What it uncovered was worse than anyone expected. Marcus had ordered every suspicious person complaint filed in Fairmont Estates over the past 5 years pulled from the municipal database. A team of 3 analysts and a civil rights attorney combed through each one, name by name, address by address, outcome by outcome. The findings landed on Marcus's desk on a Tuesday morning. He read the summary twice. Then he closed the folder and sat in silence for a long time. Franklin Deaver had filed 27 suspicious person reports over 5 years. 24 of them targeted people of color. Every single one of the 24 was unfounded. No arrests, no charges, no criminal activity of any kind. 4 reports targeted black residents of Fairmont Estates. 6 targeted Latino families or their guests. 8 targeted black or brown service workers, landscapers, house cleaners, delivery drivers. People doing their jobs in a neighborhood that had hired them to be there. And 6 targeted people who were simply existing in public spaces while not being white, walking, jogging, sitting in parked cars, swimming. The pattern wasn't subtle. It was systematic, but Franklin wasn't the only problem the review exposed. The data showed that the Fairmont Estates Police Department had responded to every single one of Franklin's reports without ever flagging the pattern. No supervisor had ever pulled the file and asked why the same man was calling about the same type of person over and over again. No one had connected the dots. The system had treated each call as isolated, each one fresh, each one worthy of a full response. The system hadn't failed. It had functioned exactly as designed, and that was the deeper problem. 4 families came forward during the review. The first was the Parker family, Gerald and Tanya Parker, black couple, 3 children. They had lived in Fairmont Estates for 6 years before selling their home and leaving the previous summer. Tanya Parker provided a written statement describing 5 separate confrontations with Franklin. At the pool, at the neighborhood playground, twice in their own driveway when Franklin questioned their guests, and once when their son was selling lemonade on the corner and Franklin called the police about an unlicensed vendor. The boy was 9 years old. Tanya wrote, "We didn't leave because we couldn't afford to stay. We left because we were tired of being treated like criminals in our own neighborhood." The second family was the Delgados, still in Fairmont Estates. But they had stopped using the pool entirely after Franklin's noise complaint at their daughter's birthday party. Their daughter had asked why they never went swimming anymore. They didn't know how to answer. The third family was a young couple who had visited friends in the neighborhood one weekend. They had been confronted by Franklin at the pool and asked to produce identification. When they showed their hosts guest passes, Franklin told them the passes looked forged. They never came back. They never filed a complaint. They just left and never returned. The fourth family was an elderly black woman named Mildred Freeman. She had lived on Magnolia Lane for 31 years. She had raised 3 children in that house. Franklin called the police on her because she was sitting on her own porch at 9 o'clock at night. He said she looked suspicious. She was 74 years old. 4 families, 4 versions of the same story. The district attorney moved forward with charges against Franklin Deaver on a Thursday. The charge was filing a false police report, a misdemeanor under Georgia law, not a felony, not a life sentence, but a criminal charge with real consequences carried by a man who had spent 5 years believing consequences were for other people. Franklin hired a defense attorney. His strategy was simple and predictable. My client is a concerned citizen who was exercising his right to report suspicious activity. There was no malicious intent. The prosecution didn't need to prove intent. They just needed the pattern. 27 reports, 24 targeting people of color, 0 criminal findings. The 911 recording where Franklin described Marcus as confrontational. a man who had offered his name and a handshake. The video showing Marcus standing motionless in a pool while his daughter splashed behind him. Franklin's attorney advised him to take a plea deal. He resisted for 2 weeks. Then he saw the jury pool demographics and changed his mind. The plea was entered on a Monday morning. Guilty. Filing a false police report. The sentence: 250 hours of community service at a youth center serving predominantly Black and Latino children. A $7,500 fine. Mandatory completion of a 12-session racial bias education program, and a permanent mark on his record that would follow him for the rest of his life. At sentencing, the judge looked at Franklin over the rim of her glasses. Her voice was measured but carried the kind of weight that silences a courtroom. Mr. Deaver, a 911 call is not a tool for managing your personal discomfort with who lives in your neighborhood. Emergency services exist to protect everyone. When you weaponize them against people based on the color of their skin, you don't just waste public resources. You inflict real harm on real families. You made a child cry through a fence. I want you to sit with that. Franklin stared at the table in front of him. He did not speak. His wife sat in the gallery behind him, clutching her purse with both hands, looking at the floor. Officer Chen's outcome was separate but equally decisive. The internal affairs investigation concluded that Chen had violated department procedure by removing a verified resident from the pool area without legal cause. He had allowed a civilian complainant to direct the course of a police response. He had failed to exercise independent judgment when the evidence in front of him clearly contradicted the caller's claims. The consequences: a formal reprimand entered into his permanent file. A 3-week suspension without pay, mandatory completion of 40 hours of de-escalation and implicit bias training. Chen accepted every consequence without appeal, and then he did something that surprised almost everyone. He released a public statement, 3 paragraphs, no legal language, no excuses. I let the caller's version of events override the evidence in front of my own eyes. Mr. Harrison showed me his ID. His address matched. His name was on the roster. And I still asked him to leave. I made that choice because the man making the complaint looked like the people I am used to believing, and the man in the pool did not. That's not procedure. That's bias, and I own it. The statement went viral alongside the original video. 35 million views combined across every platform. CNN covered it. The Washington Post ran a feature. NBC Nightly News aired a 3-minute segment. And then came the moment that broke the internet. Marcus agreed to one interview, just one. He chose a local Atlanta morning show. He brought Zoe with him. The host asked Zoe if she understood what happened at the pool that day. Zoe looked into the camera with steady brown eyes and said 7 words. My daddy didn't do anything wrong. The clip was viewed 45 million times in 4 days. It was shared by senators, athletes, teachers, pastors, and parents. It was played in classrooms. It was quoted in newspaper editorials. 7 words from an 8-year-old girl that said more than any press conference ever could. 6 months later, the Fairmont Estates community pool reopened for the summer season. There was a new sign at the entrance, white letters on a dark blue background, bolted into the brick wall right next to the key card scanner. This pool belongs to every resident of Fairmont Estates. Welcome. Marcus had approved the sign himself. He didn't write the words. Zoe did. Alina had asked her what she thought the sign should say, and Zoe had answered without hesitation. It should say welcome. So nobody feels scared like I did. On opening day, Marcus and Zoe were the first ones through the gate. She ran ahead of him in her swimsuit, goggles already on, flip-flops slapping the concrete the same way they had that Saturday morning 6 months ago. She jumped into the shallow end and came up laughing. Daddy, come on. The water is perfect. Marcus stood at the edge for a moment. He looked at the sign. He looked at the bench in the parking lot where he had sat dripping wet while his daughter cried through the bars. The bench was still there. He had chosen not to remove it. He wanted it to stay. A reminder. Then he jumped in. Harper Capital Group had its strongest quarter in company history during the months following the incident. Marcus didn't attribute that to the publicity. He attributed it to his team. But the truth was somewhere in between. The firm's reputation had grown. Investors who had never heard of Harper Capital before now wanted meetings. Marcus took some, declined others. He was selective about who he let into his world. He had always been. But the work that mattered most to him now wasn't equity deals. Marcus launched a nonprofit called the Right to Belong Initiative. The foundation provided free legal representation to families who had been targeted by racially motivated false reports. In its first 6 months, the initiative took on 17 cases across 6 states. 14 resulted in charges or civil settlements against the callers. Alina joined the board. Patricia Cohen became the foundation's first community outreach director. She spoke at neighborhood associations, churches, and school boards about bystander responsibility. Her message was always the same. I watched it happen 4 times before I picked up my phone. Don't be me, be faster. The Parker family, Gerald and Tanya, received an invitation from the Fairmont Estates HOA to return to the neighborhood. The new board president wrote them a personal letter of apology. The Parkers declined. Tanya sent back a gracious note that said, "We appreciate the gesture, but we found a community where we didn't need an apology to feel welcome." Marcus read that letter twice. He kept it in his desk drawer. Zoe told her 3rd grade class what happened at the pool. Her teacher asked her what she learned. Zoe said, "My dad says the pool is for everyone, and if someone tells you it isn't, they are wrong." The teacher used it as a classroom discussion. One of the other students raised his hand and asked, "What if nobody helps you?" Zoe thought about it for a moment. Then she said, "Then you help yourself. And then you help the next person." She was 8 years old. Franklin and his wife sold their house and moved out of Fairmont Estates 3 months after the sentencing. The house sold in 9 days. The new buyers were a young black couple with twin boys. The neighbors brought them a welcome basket on moving day. Franklin completed his 250 hours of community service at the Eastside Youth Center. His supervisor said he showed up on time every session. He was polite. He followed instructions. But in 250 hours of working alongside Black and Latino teenagers, he never once apologized to any of them. Not once. His name became a reference in the neighborhood, a shorthand, a warning. "Don't be a diva" became the phrase people used when someone reached for their phone a little too quickly. So here is what I want to leave you with. What happened at that pool wasn't just about one man with a phone and another man with a mayor's badge. It was about the hundreds of times this happens every single day to people who don't have badges, to fathers who can't prove they belong fast enough, to children who learn too young that the world sees them differently, to families who pack up and leave neighborhoods they love because they are tired of being treated like intruders. Marcus Harrison had the resources and the title to fight back. Most people don't, and that's the part of this story that should keep you up at night. Here is my question for you. If you had been at that pool, sitting under the pavilion with your phone in your hand, watching a man get escorted out while his daughter cried through the fence, would you have been the person who stood up and said something? Or would you have whispered, "I am so sorry," and walked away? Because silence has a sound, and that sound is permission. If this story hit you somewhere real, share it with someone who needs to hear it. Not because they will agree, but because they might finally understand. And if you want more stories about people who were told they didn't belong and proved everyone wrong, hit subscribe. We tell stories like this every single week. Stories about dignity, about justice, about the quiet courage it takes to stand still when the whole world is asking you to move. I will see you in the next one. And trust me, the next one is even harder to watch.